Maybe you're watching us on the big screen. Maybe we're even playing in some movie theaters. Who knows? No, I think those are closed. But from wherever you are, are coming to us, both in a technological sense and in a spiritual sense, an emotional sense, from wherever you're coming this week, let's enter into Shabbat together. This is a really special Shabbat in particular honor of LGBT Pride Month, and we're really thrilled to be welcoming a wonderful speaker, Rabbi Mike Moskowitz, that we will hear from in a little bit. We're going to begin in just a moment by singing Hine Matov together, just expressing how wonderful it is to be together with these very simple yet profound words from Psalms. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Wonderful it is to be together as siblings. So as we enter into Shabbat, I invite everybody to take a deep inhale and a complete exhale. Settle yourselves into the sacred space of Shabbat. Let go of the week that has passed. Begin with Hine Matov. Hine Matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hinei matov shevet achim gam yachad. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai.
In a moment, we will light the Shabbat candles together, and I invite you, if you're home and you have a set of Shabbat candlesticks, to join me in lighting them. If you look outside your window, we don't really need the light right now, but the purpose of lighting these candles on Shabbat isn't to provide light for us to read or to see by, but to help mark the distinction from the week into the holy space of Shabbat. And I hope that this week we'll all be able to let go of whatever has been filling our week with stress, with busyness, and to enter into a quieter place, a place of repose. So please join me in lighting as Rabbi Berkman leads us in the blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'haliver shel Shabbat.
We turn now to page 24 for Shalom Aleichem. And if you're joining us on Facebook or on Zoom, we'll share the updated online digital seed door with you, or just hum along, Yai Dadai, bring your voice into singing as we welcome the Shabbat angels.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To now sing a beautiful, very symbolic and powerful, Kabbalistic, mystical prayer. Ana bechoach gedulat yemincha, tatir tzerura kabel rinat amcha, sagvenu torenu nora. And this meant a lot of different things to the mystics. Essentially, though, I bring it here because of the first few lines. Ana bechoach, please, with strength. We're really asking in this prayer for God's right hand, the symbol of strength, to give us strength, to untie our knots. Tatir tzerura. I feel that in this unbelievably powerful, profound, difficult, and moving time that we are moving through, that we are becoming aware of new knots, of ties that bind us as a human family, ties that bind us, those of us of different races, different nationalities. Moving through a global pandemic has taught us, as nothing ever has in such a physical way, how interconnected we are. So we have those ties. And we also are certainly walking around with many, many constrictions and knots, whether in our physical bodies or in our spirits. We pray that we can loosen those knots, that we can be loose and open and whole in order to receive wisdom and insight, in order to be strengthened for our journey. So the words are here on the screen. Please feel free to join me. Nora.
Turn to page 20 in our prayer books for Lecha Dodi. And I want to draw our attention to the 5th stanza, which we'll sing together, which begins, Hitorari, awake, awake, your light has come. And let's just take a moment to take a deep breath and to notice what is awaking in us as we leave the week behind and enter Shabbat. Hitorari, wake up, wake up. Feel what is ever stirring inside you and help it awaken, help it come into the light, and help it bring us into Shabbat. We turn to page 20 and we sing together verses 1, 2, 5, and 9.
So tonight we're going to do Lecha Dodi to the tune of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Yishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad. L'shem u'letiferet v'litzila, Lecha Dodi likrat kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor haberacha, Merosh mikedem nesucha. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tefila, Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tefila, Lecha Dodi likrat kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hit'oreri, ki va'orech kumi ori, uri, shir daberi. Kevod Adonai alayich nidla, Kevod Adonai alayich nidla, Lecha Dodi likrat kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. We rise and face the door. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha u'v'tzola, Tochen munei am segula. Boi chala, boi chala, boi chala, boi chala, Lecha Dodi likrat kala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. So at this time, having welcomed Shabbat with candlelight, with the words of Lecha Dodi, having welcomed the messengers, the angels of peace, having prayed that our knots be untied and that we remember the ties that tie us together, I want to ask you to reflect on the week that has passed and what has given you a sense of awe and wonder as we prepare to sing the words of Psalm 92. Ma gadlu ma'asechaya me'od amku machshavotecha. Wow, this world. We can feel wonder, we can feel awe, we can feel gratitude even when we feel disoriented and uprooted. And in fact, perhaps it is that sense of awe and wonder that we can keep coming back to and rooting ourselves within. Perhaps it is that sense of awe and wonder that can replenish us when we make space for it on Shabbat and give us the strength to enter the work of the world. So I'm going to ask you to, if you'd like, if you're joining us through either Facebook Live or Zoom, you can write something that's given you a sense of awe and wonder into the chat, trying to bring that into this virtual space and help us feel more connected to one another. And you can also simply bring it to mind and to heart as we chant these words, hallelujah, along with the words Ma Gadlu that are on the top of page 342. I am honestly in awe that it is the end of June. I have no idea where June went. I know time has had a very strange essence these past several months, but June seems to have been especially rapid. So if you want to add into the chat and just bring it to mind, we will start chanting now. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Magadu, Masechaya. Me'odam kumachshevotecha. Hallelujah, Magadu. Ma'asechaya. Hallelujah. Me'odam kumachshevotecha. Magadu. Ma'asechaya. May we be filled up and nourished by that sense of wonder. Going to move into the Baruch Hu now on page 28. If you are able to physically rise, please do so. Otherwise, please rise in spirit for the call to prayer. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed. So as we move into the blessing, giving thanks to God who brings on evening, noticing the turning of day into night and night into day, noticing the change of seasons. I think it's particularly poignant now as we just experienced the solstice And light has such a different nature now than it did even just a little while ago. And hopefully we've slowed down enough that we notice the impact it has on the flowers, on the trees. The way that all of nature is interconnected is certainly something I have been paying more attention to. So if any of you have noticed anything interesting about light or had a light experience, maybe a beautiful sunset. I have heard that there was a rainbow on Wednesday. I didn't get to see it, but someone reached out to me to say that she had, and maybe some of you saw it too. So feel free to put any reflections, so to speak, on light in the chat on Facebook or on Zoom if you're with us that way. We're on page 30. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו, לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריף ערבים. Let's turn to page 32 for Ahavat Olam. אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אתה תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו ושופטנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו באורך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם ולילה יומם ולילה ואהבתך לא תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. Join us on page 36. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בעם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמן.
Continue on page 40 with Mi Chamocha.
Imagine being awestruck with gratitude, having come out of the narrow places into the wide expanse. What might this experience feel like for you right now? to turn to page 42 and get in touch with that feeling of safety and security at the same time as we express the longing to be safe and secure. And we hold both of those poles of our existence. We know what it is to feel safe and secure. God willing, each of us has experienced that feeling at least sometime in our lives, but we also must hold that with the reality when we feel unsafe. We pray, as our ancestors did, that we lie down in peace to rise up to a new day of being God's partner in this world that is so in need of us. So we're going to sing Hashkivenu, the first two lines on the top of 42, and then we'll sing Ufros Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha, and we'll imagine that canopy of peace that we pray for God to spread over us, and we know that we must create that canopy of peace in the way that we treat one another, in the way that we treat this creation, in the way that we sanctify our lives. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomereinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomereinu. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Sleep tonight. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Don't sleep tonight. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomereinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomereinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukkah, sukkah, shelomecha. Ufros aleinu sukkah, sukkah, shelomecha. We'll turn now to the Amidah. We will chant the first two blessings aloud, starting on page 46, with a prayer that we may be able to pray. And we'll take some moments for our own individual prayer before concluding with our prayer for peace. If you're following in the book online or in hard copy, we're beginning on page 46 and then going from page 48 through 52. Please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע. מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני אחר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך מנית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, קדושים בכל יום תהללו חסנה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. So we're going to turn to the Mishaberach, to the prayer for healing. If you would like to share names of those you are praying for a healing of body or spirit, please feel free to type them into the chat if you're on Facebook or Zoom, or simply to say them aloud. I think even if you're alone in your home, I think it's really powerful to say the name aloud. I think it brings it into our virtual space in a powerful way, in an energetic way, and we can all hold that together and lift that name up for healing. So I see Wendy Norton, Rosamunda Abraham, Lily Downing and her newborn daughter. We can continue to bring names into our space as we pray this words of the Mishaberach, Debbie Friedman's version on page 253. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And let us say, Amen. May all those we have mentioned tonight and held in our hearts know complete healing, a sense of wholeness and peace, and let us say, Amen. At this time, it is my distinct honor to welcome into our midst Rabbi Mike Moskowitz. Welcome, Rabbi. We are so honored to have you here and so grateful that you've taken the time out to share some thoughts with our community in our observance of LGBT Pride Month. Just by way of introduction, Rabbi Mike Moskowitz is the scholar in residence for trans and queer Jewish studies at Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, the world's largest LGBT synagogue. He is deeply traditional and radically progressive advocate for trans rights and a vocal ally for LGBTQ inclusivity. He is a David Hartman Center Fellow and the author of Textual Activism. His new book, Graceful Masculinity, will be out in the winter. In 2018, when Proposition 3 was added to the ballot in Massachusetts and threatened to repeal the law designed to prohibit discrimination based on gender identity in public places such as hotels, restaurants, and stores, Keshet, a leading LGBTQ based in Boston, brought Rabbi Moskowitz to speak at that time on behalf of the Yes on 3 campaign. And it is certainly our pleasure to welcome Rabbi Moskowitz to Temple Ohabei Shalom tonight.
Good evening, a good Erev Shabbos. Rabbi, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a distinct honor and pleasure to be here. My name is Rabbi Mike Moskowitz. My pronouns are he, him, and it's a little bit awkward being the scholar in residence for trans and queer Jewish studies and not being trans nor queer. But allyship is honestly a little bit awkward because it's predicated on the world being broken. If folks were not being dehumanized, others wouldn't have to stand up in that space. It's also often awkward because the precision that is required to take up just the right amount of space is as elusive as it is aspirational. What can be really affirming and validating for one can be deeply traumatic and offensive to another. But at the end of the day, it's much more awkward to be silent. And unfortunately, we live in a time that, God forbid, it should ever become easier to be motivated to be an ally. Within our tradition, the word that we normally translate as friend, chaver, I think is actually the Hebrew word within the Jewish tradition for ally. It actually means to attach oneself. It gets its name actually from the 6th letter in the Hebrew alphabet, the letter Vav, which is the most vertical one that stands up and actually looks like a hook. And it gets its name from the biblical passage in the tabernacle, the Vavei HaMishkan, the hooks that were used in the tabernacle in the desert to connect the pillars to the curtains. And that's what it means to be an ally, to take the privilege that's often socially constructed or the resources we have for being the results of our unique life experiences and attaching ourselves to the needs of another, to being able to amplify that first person narrative and that voice, and to stand to help shoulder and burden the weight. No one's life is ever hypothetical, and rabbis in particular have this way of existing in the world of ideas, that it's often in a theoretical space. If a person gets out of jail Erev Yom Kippur and there's only one mitzvah, there's time to just do one mitzvah, what mitzvah should they do? But that is a question, it's not a person, and we're meant to answer people in that questions. And so the most important thing to realize is that as an ally, our lived life experience is often unrecognizably different to that of a member of a traditionally marginalized segment of society. Most of us don't worry about getting pulled over by police or walking on the streets in whatever neighborhood. So it's something to recognize that within our tradition, when we come together as part of the whole, we're each able to contribute not just that which is uniquely ours, but also to make sure that the contributions of those around us are also part of it. And so we find in this week's Parsha the exact opposite of this spectrum, and that is Kairach. Kairach claims that all of Israel matters and is holy, but really he was looking for more power as a way of dividing up the Jewish people. Divisiveness is itself as unholy as it gets. We know that on the day that God separates the waters, there doesn't have the phrase ki tov. It doesn't say that it was good. And in fact, it's on that day that we have the Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos is Libnei Kairach. It is for, it's written actually by the children, the sons of Kairach, as a kind of a tikkun, a way of fixing it. We find throughout the week of creation, even on the day in which darkness and light was separated, because those are mutually exclusive. And it's a deep, actually, conversation about whether or not evil really exists or it's just the absence of good, and that parallels the darkness and light. We see that God responds to the initial darkness by saying, Yehi or, let there be light. And we know from scriptures that Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, that God's candle is our soul. And so each one of us needs to look out into the darkness and ask ourselves, where do I want to stand? What do I want my candle to be? Where can I have unique access to be able to push away that darkness? And our rabbis tell us the reason why a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness is because the light is real. And so when everything works by itself, it's tov during the week, but now Erev Shabbos, when it comes together, the pasuk tells us that it was tov ma'od, that it was exceedingly good, it was very good. And the Sforno explains that when things operate as individuals, as entities, a tree by itself is good, a plant by itself, a fish by itself. But when it comes to humanity and to society and to the universe coming together in unity, so then it becomes exponentially better. And that's really kind of the unity that Shabbos provides. It's really interesting. We'll speak a couple of minutes about allyship for gender identity and sexual orientation. Obviously, those are different things. Who a person is when they go to sleep is different than who a person wants to sleep with. But Shabbos is actually an invitation for an all-gendered experience. In Genesis 1:22, God refers to the first person who's created in the image of God, right? A God that has no image but still has gendered attributes in the plural. And so if God can use plural pronouns, so can we. And it's actually reflected in the liturgy of Shabbos. Friday night, there's an attribute of the feminine. So we turn around in most communities, regardless of one's gender identity or sexual orientation, and we invite the Shabbos queen. And God actually models intimacy as an invitation that God invites us into God's intimate space for Shabbos. And the Talmud tells us, and it's reflected in the practice by Kabbalah Shabbos, to declare intentionality, like I'm interested, and then we wait, not just for the absence of a no, but for enthusiastic consent. And then that's why it says Vaynuchu va in the feminine Friday night. Shabbos day it says Vaynuchu vo in the masculine. And for some people actually have a custom of changing the order of the chalas, of the top and the bottom, depending on the day or the night. And then by Mincha on Shabbos, it's actually Vaynuchu vam, that God rests in them, in the plural. And so Shabbos itself, because it represents the spectrum of God's capacity for intimacy, also invites us to be sensitive to gender on a soul level. And so one of the things that we can also recognize as an ally is that there's so many more questions that we don't have answers to. What does it mean for God to have gendered attributes and not have a body? Is there a place along the period of a person's individualized transition where Jewish law can validate and affirm the new gender identity? Is it just a haircut or pronouns? Is it perhaps an awareness of being transgender? What happens in even most movements that have a posture of egalitarianism? There's a different ask for conversion. If you have, let's say, a woman of trans experience who did not have bottom surgery and was not circumcised, right? So is that necessary for conversion? Is it body part specific or is it gender specific? And so too, for let's say a man of trans experience who gives birth, is that an affront to matrilineal descent? And so there are a lot of questions that we might not have answers to. And in kind of that meta question of where gender lies, it can be really interesting and even academically stimulating. But again, there's this urgency to be able to answer questions in present tense for people with a pulse who are suffering. Not only do trans lives matter, but the lives they live matter. And human dignity also plays a role within Jewish law. And so even though we don't understand what it means as for those of us who are cis or gender conforming or fit into the binary, what it means to be either genderqueer or to be trans or even LGBT, we don't actually need to know what the lived experience is of another to be able to listen very humbly, to be able to understand the role that we can play in that. I personally only got involved in this work a few years ago when someone in my family transitioned. And I said, how do you know that you're a guy? I know how I'm a guy and it's not the same. And he just said to me, I am. And it took a few weeks to realize that me knowing that I don't know is actually the most generative part of this experience, because being cisgender is actually just a function of the limited awareness I have to gender as defined by one's body. Like I don't feel masculine the way in which I don't necessarily even feel Jewish, that if I was assigned a different religion, I don't know how much of an awareness I would have. And so it's really tricky to be able to try to understand what it's like to be in a traditionally marginalized segment of society. And in fact, perhaps impossible, because we'll never know what it's like to live through those experiences. But we don't need to be in those shoes to be able to know that we have a role, because we have a voice, because we have resources, because we are all connected. And the most pronounced identity of any human being is that of being created in the image of the divine. And when we're able to see that and we're able to elevate it, then we're able to recognize that which separates us is really often just a social construction, and that which unites us is very much deep on a soul level. It's for that reason, by the giving of the Torah, which I see as God's coming out speech, that there was this great unity between us and each other as a prerequisite of being able to accept the Torah, to be in relationship with God. And now, unfortunately, because when God told us who God really is, we didn't believe God and served as a golden calf just 40 days later, because of all of the blatant hatred and us dehumanizing God's children. God has been forced back into the closet, because it's actually not a safe space for God to be out as who God really is. And so that's the work that we have to do. We see that there's holiness when we invite people into the room. There's more godliness when there's more people. A sanctuary needs to be that, a literal place for a person to be safe in relationship with God, to be their most authentic and genuine version of self. So there's no shortage of work to be done. But if we want to make this personal, which is, I think, what motivates most people to get involved, then just like it says about Joseph and his brothers, that they saw him from afar and sought to do him harm, it's much easier to dehumanize somebody from a distance. That's one of the reasons why in the last 50 years, there's been so much more progress for LGBT equality than there is for racial equity up until maybe a couple of weeks ago, because it's much easier to get to know somebody, find out they're a wonderful human being, and then also that they happen to be queer. But when a person sees somebody of color, right, we bring those prejudices with us as soon as we see them. And so the goal of all of this work is to make it personal. If we want to have a relationship with God as a parent, we need to love all of God's children as our sibling. So I want to pause because I know that there was a lot of words and some people can't hear faster just because somebody else is speaking faster. So I understand that we wanted to have some time for questions, and be delighted to speak to any thoughts that folks have around the allyship more broadly, or LGBT things, or anything that is of interest. And again, thank you so very much for this invitation. And I know that we can't be together in person, but I come to Massachusetts often, and so God willing, we'll be able to celebrate and be in conversation in person soon when the world heals.
Thank you, Rabbi. It's actually a blessing. It's one of the treats of this time is that we can bring you in over Zoom and that you can be with us this Shabbat. So thank you. We do have a time for a couple of questions. I want to kick it off. And if people want to type any questions into the chat, I'm happy to choose one or two to ask you. But I wanted to kick it off by asking about one of the challenges of allyship is when somebody shares their experience and it doesn't conform with our expectations or our values. And how do we go through the process? How do we begin to move from the place where we are to a place where we can support them? What does that look like on the internal level?
Yeah, the internal level hopefully can be we can pivot a little bit for the priorities, just without being too political. Black Lives Matter is a movement that has a platform, and not everybody agrees with every aspect of that platform. But if we think about what's essential about the movement and elevating that which is the most important, which is human dignity, when God forbid a person's in a restaurant, when people could be in restaurants and somebody's choking, we don't ask them how did you vote on Planned Parenthood? How did you vote on Israel? How do you see the world, right, and all of its complexity before we feel obligated to come and try to save their lives? So one of the things that I think is really difficult, especially for young people, is the capacity to hold complexity, right? Every page of Talmud is filled with a back and forth. We accept it, we reject it, we end up somewhere in the middle. There was a study recently that I saw, evidently only about 10% of society, when their favorite sports person gets traded to their least favorite team, can maintain the relationship with their favorite player, least favorite team. For 90% of society, that's it. They're done. How can this person be my favorite person? They're my worst favorite team. Okay, it's hard, right? So I can promise you there is another human in the world that sees the world the way that I do. And even for me, with the same parents my entire life, it does change, right, from day to day, as it should. So, maybe to say it just in the form of a little bit of Torah, when God created the world, we see two of God's names, one that represents a strict attribute of mercy and one of strict of judgment. And Rashi brings down that God wanted to create this world through the strict attribute of judgment, saw it wasn't going to be sustainable. So God kind of preemptively gave this kind of intense mercy in the world of action. And the Sfas Emes says that these principles obtain that when it comes to what do we want, God is very strict. Because how do you justify, I want to be obnoxious, I want to be a jerk, I want to be offensive, I want to be unhealthy? You want to defend why? They're all you can eat buffets. I stayed up all night, doing something. Right? I couldn't go, right? So I can explain to you in the world of action why I'm cranky, right? So for that, there's compassion. So what I would say is, if two people, let's say, disagree on the way to achieve something, for example, gun control. If two people can say, I want children to be safe, I want to end gun violence, reasonable people can disagree about the way to achieve that, right? Different countries have different cultures, right? Reasonable, good people, right, who want the same thing can argue in the world of action on how to get there. We need to be more expansive and say, listen, okay, we want to achieve the thing, so let's be in a conversation. Let's look at data, let's, all these things. So when somebody says, listen, I think, and pick anything, and it's the opposite of our own, okay, but does that mean that you're not entitled to oxygen? Does that mean that you that somehow warrants violence? It doesn't. We disagree, and good people, very reasonable people, can disagree about things. So I think that's at least some sort of template.
Thank you. And not to reduce all the beautiful things you just said to one aspect, but I think when you shared the sports metaphor, that is what translates up here in Boston, and people can understand when their favorite player goes to the Yankees that's going to present some challenges. If anybody has a question, I'm happy to share it out loud, or Rabbi Berkman. If not, I'm happy to take advantage of having the floor and the chance to ask Rabbi Moskowitz more. So maybe just one more question. I'm curious if you could just share personally, when I asked you what a title might be for this, you said allyship as a form of spiritual practice. I hope I'm getting that correct. And you could just share a little bit about what that spiritual growth has been like and how that how that's played out for you.
Sure. I'm motivated to talk about this for a few reasons. One is because like it's the lane that feels the most authentic to me, right? We're talking about pride, and I'm straight, and I don't need a white pride or a straight pride because society has given already way too much privilege there. And so I think the role is really to ally. Also, like as much as it's tricky, it can also feel intimidating, and people can often think about themselves like, look, I'm not the protesting type. I'm never going to get arrested. I'm scared. One time I tried to, share my pronouns, and I prefaced it by saying my preferred pronouns and got yelled at. It's not a preference. So like, it's not worth it. And I think the bar has been made really high. And I think that that's artificial as well. Systemic change happens in gradations, especially in the ultra Orthodox world around LGBT inclusivity. Historically, it's been an intolerable deviancy, meaning that a person cannot come out as queer or genderqueer and stay in the community. It's now shifted that it's a tolerable deviancy, right? Which I know is offensive to talk about, but it's actually an important kind of movement that's significant, because now, let's say a young kid says, "Mami, Tati," you have to stop asking about shidduchim, because it's not pshat as I'm not attracted to this woman. It's pshat as like I'm not attracted to women, right? So that child is no longer thrown out. And there's still this, rabbinic malpractice in most communities of people who are queer being forced to marry in heteronormative spaces where everybody loses. And so that's kind of the next big fight. But in certain communities, it's moved even from the tolerable deviancy to acceptance. And then in some places, there are ultra-Orthodox people that not only accept their kids, but actually celebrate their kids who happen to be queer. And that is the goal, right? The goal is to get the celebration, but you don't get to skip spots. Like it really is, and often can take a long time. And that's why it's important to stay in community in those conversations. For me, really personally, I was a rabbi at Columbia University. I was the rabbi of the old Broadway synagogue when I was kind of faced with this challenge of, do I want to keep the comfort of, right, really being in a place where life was really relatively easy for me? Or was I willing to take on the precarity to do something which I knew? And I was writing letters to day schools throughout the countries that were threatened to throw out trans students. One of them actually, one of them got leaked, and they told me, the people who employed me told me if I didn't stop, it wouldn't continue. And there was a real choice. I mean, there was a choice to be made. And I actually went to Isabella Friedman. There was a week-long silent meditation, and that's not my happy space. But I was like, look, it's a big decision, and somebody encouraged me to sit with it. So I sat with it, and I think in the first session, like, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds in, I was like, of course I'm going to say something. I'm not going to be quiet. And then I had to sit in silence for another week. But in that time, I kind of wrote my coming out speech as an ally. And it was Hanukkah about 3 years ago. I got fired shortly thereafter and could not find another job. It was very public. A lot of people wrote about it. There's a video of it on Facebook somewhere. And I ended up working in a deli in Lakewood, New Jersey, where I went to yeshiva because nobody would hire me. And I took a day off for civil disobedience over DACA about 2.5 years ago, and did get arrested in the back of a police wagon. It's a great story, but I don't want to take up too much time. But basically, there's 5 male rabbis, this mechitza, this metal partition in the back of the police wagon, and 5 female rabbis. And the woman across asked if there was anyone had any Torah to share. And it was a captive audience. We were all in handcuffs. And I had just written an article on gender and clothing, and I shared. And that woman was Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum, who's my boss. And she created this position for me 2 years ago with the generosity of folks at CVST. I'm approaching my 100th article that I've published since I've been there. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of work to be done. But for me, like I think for everybody, we have unique contributions that we can make that nobody else can make because nobody else is us. That's, I think, what Hillel means. If I'm not for myself, will be for me because nobody else is me. And then there are things that everybody can do because, right, we're people. So allyship, I think, can really be advanced and honed in to take the unique skills that each person has. And there's like a baseline of like, we can combat the micro and macro aggressions with micro and macro affections. And that's something that, is smiling. And that is about being sensitive and recognizing our own privilege. And so I think it's universal, the way in which I think we all should be learning, right? And each one of us often, I think, does have a unique voice and unique truths to share. And so I hope that people feel invited and maybe even obligated to expand a little bit that consciousness, to be more deliberate with the choices we make. And also that, resistance can, as spiritual practice, can be spiritual, can be political. Joy as political resistance, not to get depressed, not to be exhausted. The world's really heavy now. The world has been really heavy for a lot of people for a really long time. And for some of us, it's new that it feels like this abrasive and this exhausting. So if we're able to get to a place where we can feel like the best way to cope is by attempting to affect change, it can be really restorative and also generative.
Thank you so much. And a few questions came in, which actually you did a great job of answering as you were talking. It's really been wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Have a wonderful Shabbos, friends, and I'm easily found on the web. If anyone has further questions, feel free to email me. Thank you also very much. Beautiful service, and have a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you. Shabbos. Well, I'm really excited by the conversation I saw beginning in the chat. I took a peek at the Facebook questions, and I know that Rabbi Moskowitz was able to answer some in his remarks, but certainly not all. Clearly, he is very accessible, and so I certainly hope that this is just the first of many conversations that we will have about allyship, about these specific issues, and also as allyship relates to so much of what we need to do at this moment in many ways. So I know that many of us were very moved. I certainly was very moved by those remarks, and thank you to Rabbi Schaefer for arranging for Rabbi Moskowitz to be with us tonight. So rest assured that we are collecting any questions that were and comments that were in the chat, so that we can be sure that as our conversation continues as a community in different forms, we will have these in mind. And really glad we were able to observe Pride Month in this way. So we're going to move toward concluding our service with Aleinu. Feel it's appropriate after those remarks. Aleinu, it is upon us. In this prayer, we say it's upon us to praise God, but I think that being an ally, being an activist in whatever way, whatever that looks like for you, in acting and working for a world that is more tolerant and inclusive, it is Aleinu. It is on each and every one of us. So we'll turn to page 282. Please rise if you're able. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגופי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
At this moment in tonight's service, we turn to Mourner's Kaddish, which can be found on page 294. If you're saying Kaddish for somebody tonight and you'd like to share their name in the chat window on Zoom or on Facebook, we're happy to share them with our whole community. As a synagogue community tonight, we remember Doris Zimmer, the beloved wife of former cantor Alex Zimmer, who passed away last week. We also remember Neil Spritz, beloved father of Nathan and Nancy, grandfather of Zeke and Bennett. Please join me on page 294 for Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yama divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitale, v'yitalal, shmei d'kudsha berechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Hoseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. You may be seated. Just want to share a couple of quick announcements. I'll be leading a Torah study tomorrow at 10:30. We'll be studying the causes of Korach's rebellion, and everybody is welcome. It is over Zoom, and the link is in the newsletter and on the website. And on Monday night is our annual meeting. Please join us so that we can have a quorum.
I'll also add that my next session of my class discussion group, Sustaining Our Souls, will be meeting this Wednesday, July 1st. Can't believe that will be July 1st, but it will. So it's this week, Wednesday at 12 to 1. And it's open to anybody. And we'll be just looking at some texts that will hopefully nourish our souls for this moment we are in. So with that, we will make Kiddush and Motzi. And if you'd like to join in at home, of course, feel free. And I know we certainly look forward to the day when we can, again, make Kiddush together and share challah and other treats in person. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho v'yahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit. Hu yom techila למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי באנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון, הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ. אמן. Let's conclude with Olam Chesed Yibaneh. The words are very simple. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. May a world of passion, of generosity, loving generosity, generosity of love be built. These words from Psalms. I will build this world from love. You must build this world from love. And if we build this world from love, God will build this world from love. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. may this Shabbat serve to nourish your soul and replenish you for building a world of chesed. And may you know much chesed and love this Shabbat. And I want to thank Rabbi Jethro Berkman, my husband, for accompanying me on guitar tonight, as he has for the past, I don't know, 15 weeks or something. So thank you all for being with us. We miss being with you in person, and we wish you a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.